There is a concerted effort across the board to try and sabotage our media platforms. Never have we been under more sustained attack. And it's completely across the board. I mean, you saw what they did to Milo, this fake setup. They had the material for months. He made comments, not even as bad as similar people have made comments about the similar subject. Bill Maher said similar things. Other leftists have said similar things. And basically, it was a concerted attempt to sabotage and destroy Milo. Of course, he'll be back. He already is back. But again, it's about creating these wedges, creating these divisions. And of course, it's about sabotaging our financial platform, which, as you well know by now, is what's happening with Infowars.com. They're literally trying to sabotage our advertising, trying to attack us at the base level. Of course, they can't debate us. They can't fight with us. They can't beat us on an equal playing field, on a level playing field. So they always go for the most insidious, underhanded methods, which is to character assassinate us and attack our financial backing, which is why we need your support now more than ever. This is not a cliche. This is an absolute red alert right now, because we're being attacked on all fronts, not just hit pieces, but actual financial attacks now being led by the screeching lunatics that have contracted post-Hillary PTSD in the aftermath of the election. Absolutely hysterical. And this is how they're lashing out. So we need your support more than ever by getting the Defend Infowars specials at InfowarsStore.com. They include Silver Bullet, Colloidal Silver, 33% off stock price. Super Male Vitality, 25% off. Brain Force, which is, of course, my favorite product, 25% off. Caveman is 33% off. Donald J. Trump and Ronald Reagan lithographs, $19.95. And you can also get Roger Stone's new book, which I've got right here, and I'm reading. There's the bookmark to prove it, if you flash that up on screen. The Making of the President 2016 by Roger Stone. Show it on screen so they know I'm reading it. There it is. See the bookmark? That means I'm actually reading it. And it's excellent so far. I'm only about, 50 pages in, but that is the inside scoop on the election from somebody who would be in a position to know, Roger Stone, and it's a really well put together book as well, really high quality book. It's the inside story, how Donald Trump orchestrated a revolution, by his former confidant, Roger Stone, New York Times best-selling author, and that is available at InfowarsStore.com. Also, you can donate directly at Infowars.com/show. More important than ever that you support this network. We're under sustained attack every single day. I mean, we can't even keep up with them anymore. There are hit pieces on Alex. There are hit pieces on Infowars. There are hit pieces on me. They're trying to set me up in some way. All these big journalists and big news outlets, they all want to meet up with me and do an interview, which is going to be a vicious hit piece, because it always is. And, they're always really friendly at the beginning. Oh, we just want to understand your perspective. There was actually one a couple of weeks ago, which they wanted me involved in, which aired on Channel 4, which is, probably the third biggest news channel in the United Kingdom. And of course, they approached me and said, we're interested in the alt-right. I'm not even a part of the alt-right, since the media was able to seize, hijack, and demonize that term. But they wanted me on the show about the quote alt-right, British Donald Trump Brexit supporters, or whatever you want to call it. And they were really friendly about it. We just want your perspective. This is a neutral, balanced piece. I said no, of course. I said no to all of them. And then it aired, and it was literally an absolute horror show. First, you had, the foreboding B-roll, the rainy windows, the ominous music in the background. And the people they interviewed were absolute lunatics. This was a complete setup just to try and do a guilt by association by lumping me, Alex, and Infowars in with it. So the kind of people they had a guy in a giant frog's mask sat in his tiny apartment, talking about relationship between IQ and race, all this slimy neo-Nazi stuff. They had an actual neo-Nazi who was a fan of Hitler and Mein Kampf. They had, obviously, social rejects, people with mental health problems. And it was all about the alt-right, and this was the alt-right. You know, they had an ex-BNP member, the basically proto-fascist party in the United Kingdom that has now declined. But it was all these horrible, slimy people, foreboding, ominous B-roll and music, and this was what they presented as, you know, the alternative in the United Kingdom. And of course, that's why they wanted me on it. In fact, they got one of the individuals that was on the show to basically say that I had inspired her. Thankfully, she was one of the less insane ones, but the others were absolute lunatics, just to be accurate. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to set us up. They set Milo up. They're going after other people who won't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it right now, but there is a concerted effort across the board to try and sabotage our media platforms. And, you know, it's you can trace it directly back to this PTSD that Alex talks about. They see Milo Yiannopoulos, who, of course, was basically forced to resign from Breitbart. They've had a hysterical shrieking fit since Donald Trump won the election. This is PTSD on steroids. They literally think, because they've been radicalized by the absolutely crazy mainstream media propaganda, they've been radicalized into thinking that Donald Trump is literally Hitler. And we're going to play the Tucker Carlson clip here in a couple of minutes. But they've literally been brainwashed and radicalized by the mainstream media that Donald Trump is literally Hitler, that he's going to incinerate the world. And when you feed that kind of rhetoric into people on a daily basis, how do you expect them to react? This is mass hysteria run wild. Trump has barely even had the chance to do anything. What, has he been in office for a month? How long is this going to go on? In fact, it was trending on Twitter, and it still is. The Washington Post has put a new little slogan at the top of their website, which reads, "Democracy dies in darkness." Listen to how they're framing this stuff. This is completely hysterical. They're allowed to criticize Trump and his administration 24/7 on a sustained basis on every single platform available. And they're still trying to make out as if he's this dark dictator that's trying to shut all the media down. No other president in living memory has faced this much intense slander and criticism from the mainstream media, whether you think it's justified or not. He's not closing them down. He's not throwing people in concentration camps, as the far left Revolutionary Communist Party member said on Tucker Carlson last night on Fox News. But this is just an example of the absolute PTSD, mass hysteria, which has gripped not just America, but the entire Western world after the election of Donald Trump. And it is quite chilling. Let's go to that Tucker Carlson clip now. This is Tucker speaking to a member of the Revolutionary Communist Party about Donald Trump. Here it is.
America has not become a totalitarian death state just yet. Regardless, some are still trying to ignite an uprising to throw him out of power. A group called Refuse Fascism says its goal is to, quote, drive the Trump-Pence regime out. They describe it as illegitimate, a cabal of, quote, white supremacists, women haters, science deniers, religious fundamentalist zealots, and warmongers who will eventually start a nuclear war. We're joined now by Sinsara Taylor. She's an organizer with Refuse Fascism. Sinsara, thanks for joining us. So I was reading your manifesto tonight, and you said this: the Trump regime is a fascist regime, no insult or exaggeration, that's what it is. For the future of humanity and the planet, we the people must drive this regime out. I'm assuming you're not a moderate necessarily, but the obvious question arises, which is, if it's a fascist regime, how are you on this show?
Look, Donald, we're facing an emergency. Humanity is facing an emergency. A fascist regime has seized the reins of power in the most powerful, actually the sole superpower in the world. Trump and Pence are operating out of Hitler's playbook, only they have nuclear weapons. And what refusefascism.org is saying to the world is that while it's beautiful, it's righteous that millions of people have stood up in protest and continue to do so. And by the way, since I know he sometimes watches, President Trump, if you're watching, way more people have protested than were at your Nazi inauguration. But while this is beautiful, this resistance needs to grow, and people need to confront that this is a fascist regime. They could drop the hammer and close down. It's working aggressively to close down the space for people to stand up and resist. And so in the name of humanity, 7 billion on this planet, we need to pour into the streets and say no. We refuse to accept a fascist America. We refuse to accept this for the world, and we must drive them out. We need to stay in the streets.
I mean, so many questions come to mind, but the obvious one is this. I always thought that the day somebody got up, a Republican, and said, you know what, we got to focus on jobs, no more pointless wars in the Middle East, and by the way, I'm a secular guy, they would say, you know, that's kind of my kind of Republican. You know, I mean,
a man who campaigned and said, I long for the days when protesters were dragged out on stretchers, who offered to pay the bills of people who assaulted protesters at his rally. Donald Trump is a fascist. That's out of Hitler's playbook. This is a danger to humanity. And yes, it's in its early stages, but people need to rise up and stop it before it is too late.
Okay, so, but I want to get to that. Rise up and stop it. So I'm assuming that, I mean, you're not serious. I mean, this is like play acting for you. If you really thought he was Hitler, if you really believed that he was acting according to, as you said, the playbook of Hitler, then you wouldn't stop with going on a cable show. I mean, you'd go all the way, wouldn't you? I mean, you don't really think that, or you'd be committing acts of violence, right?
I absolutely think. Actually, he's not like Hitler. He has a Twitter feed, he has that ugly orange thing on top of his head, and he has nuclear weapons, the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. And people better wake up, because he is more dangerous than Hitler ever could have been.
But I mean, let's just be real for a second. I know we're on TV, but please be real. If you really thought that...
Hold on, you implied something, and I want to answer it. You implied that I'm going to do something that's untoward, whatever. I'm calling for mass political protest and resistance, building on what's happened and staying in the streets in the name of humanity. Before the man starts, he asked 3 times, if I have nukes, why can't I use them?
No, I
this is the mass incineration of human beings on an industrial scale.
I can see that you're, I can see you're spun
against
up here.
Humanity.
But let's just be more specific, because I want to take you seriously. I assume you're being serious, hard as it is to believe, when you use rhetoric like he's Hitler, he's going to incinerate the world.
No, I said nuclear weapons are the mass incineration of human beings on an industrial scale. Oh, sure.
You think
nukes are no big deal for you. I know you like to carry water for the liar-in-chief. I know you like to justify and rationalize the sexual predator-in-chief, but I don't think this is a joke. This is for humanity, and he is dangerous.
But what are you going to do about it, Sinsara? That's my question. Other than, like, jump around in the street with a sign in your hand, okay, no, and write your little manifestos.
RefuseFascism.org has a manifesto, as you said. RefuseFascism.org. We say we have 4 things people should do. They should manifest the no. They should protest every outrage and crime, but we have to have a single unifying objective. And the people who are waking up in this country, who are horrified by this man with his finger on the nuclear weapon, we need to recognize that he has to be driven from office through mass political resistance before it is too late. Fascism advances through stages. Shock, awe, violence,
is silly. You
and
don't
then periods of normalization.
Fascism with political resistance, but whatever, you may not know
actually,
that.
Actually, it would have taken millions and millions to rise up to stop Hitler. It absolutely would have.
But what do you
and it's what people should have done.
Okay,
and it is shameful. It is shameful for you to dismiss this.
But hold on, I know it's shameful, but let me just ask you this.
It's funny to you.
Question. So the
no, because I know you love to carry water for this criminal, this war criminal wannabe in chief.
Right.
He's itching.
But hold on.
You find that as petty matter?
There were 62...
Tucker, you find that petty? You find that a petty concern that he wants to...
I know that you're very petty, but I'm trying to ask you a real question.
Nuclear weapons are as serious as you can be.
I just want to ask you... Okay, well, let me ask you one last question, okay? 62 million people voted for Trump, and disproportionately, they were people at the lower end of the income scale.
Oh,
they were,
God.
they were actually. They were middle class and below, mostly. Opposed to Trump were, I don't know, the hedge fund managers and privileged people like you. Did you ever think to yourself, like, why is the middle class...
He lost the popular vote. He lost the popular vote, and no election, fair or fraudulent, no election, fair or fraudulent, can justify ripping up the rule of law, undermining the courts, threatening and shutting down the press.
You're saying that you should throw a duly elected president out of office.
No, I'm saying people should resist. Yes, that's what he means when he says so-called judge. That's what he means when he fires an attorney general who disagrees with his laws.
What I want to do is get to how you think.
What you want to do is normalize fascism. What you want to do is try to caricature and dismiss people who are telling the truth.
For me. Thanks, though.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're dealing with. And it's not just this, that this is some far-left hysterical moron. These are the kind of people who are being legitimized by the mainstream left. These are the kind of people who are being radicalized by mainstream media propaganda about Trump being literally Hitler and trying to shut down the media when it's not happening at all. 24/7, every single media platform you can imagine. The criticism, the slander, the defamation never ends. It's a constant sewer pipe. Nobody's shutting it down. Listen to what she said. She talks about a fascist regime closing down space to protest Trump. Literally every night, there's some hissy fit toys out of the pram protest against Donald Trump in major cities around the world. Nobody's shutting it down. I mean, look at what happened at the inauguration. The police backed off. They were allowed to smash windows. They were allowed to assault people. Nobody's even shutting those people down. Look at what happened at Berkeley. They were allowed to smash up buildings and assault people, pepper spray women in the face. That's not protest, that's riot, that's criminal assault. They were still allowed to get away with even that. There's no shutdown of any of this. It's all in their hysterical minds. She said that Trump is more dangerous than Hitler. I mean, is there anything that's more offensive to actual victims of Hitler and their ancestors than such a stupid comment like that? She said Trump is a war criminal. He hasn't even launched any wars. He's been in office for 4 frigging weeks. Oh, but, you know, Obama can drop, 200,000 bombs on Muslim countries. What has she got to say about it? Diddly squat. Nothing. Revolutionary Communist Party. Give me a break. Calling Trump a genocidal maniac, saying he's going to incinerate the world, commit genocide, commit mass genocide. Oh, what? Like communism did? 90 million people dead in the last century alone. That kind of genocide. And again, if these people were just left out on the fringe and laughed at, it would be one thing, but they're being brought into the mainstream left. They're being legitimized. You saw it after the inauguration, punch a Nazi, which turned into, punch Milo. And then they had graffiti on the walls at these Antifa riots that said, liberals get the bullet next. Basically, anyone who's not completely unhinged and hysterical, we will violently attack you because we've got the moral high ground. No, you don't. You're the friggin' fascists. Absolutely incredible. These people are being brought into the mainstream left while they call us extremists. We're going to move into some global news now because, of course, we had Trump commenting on Sweden, saying last night in Sweden, referring to a Fox News report that he'd seen about migrant crime areas in Sweden the previous night. And, of course, the left mocked him relentlessly. What was quite funny, as you heard on the report we played earlier, last night in Sweden, or the night before last as it is now, there were migrant mobs rioting, burning cars, attacking reporters, looting stores, attacking shopkeepers, throwing stones at police officers. That happened last night in Sweden, and the left had nothing whatsoever to say about that, did they? And now look at what's happening. You want to talk about hysterical, far-left, unhinged radicals who are now part of the mainstream left. Let's talk about Robert Reich, Berkeley professor, former US Secretary of Labor. This was the idiot who got up on CNN and said that Milo had paid the Black Bloc Antifa thugs to attack his own supporters, that it was a false flag. It was a conspiracy set up by Milo and Breitbart. They didn't even challenge him on it. He's back with more insanity. This is out of Information Liberation. Berkeley professor Robert Reich blames Trump for riot in Sweden. According to Berkeley professor and former US Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, Donald Trump's lies caused the riots in Sweden on Monday night. This is a continuation of everything we saw throughout the campaign, where it was Donald Trump's rhetoric that was responsible for anti-Trump agitators beating up Donald Trump supporters. And it continues. Earlier this month, Reich floated the insane conspiracy theory that Breitbart plants were responsible for the riots at Berkeley. That's since been thoroughly debunked, as if it even needed to be debunked. Floating another loony theory, On Tuesday, Reich said on Twitter, quote, Trump's lies have consequences. 48 hours after his comments on Sweden, riots broke out in an immigrant community. Now, if Robert Reich had actually read the news reports as to why there was a riot in that migrant suburb of Stockholm on Monday night, he would have seen that it was because the police arrested a drug dealer. And the local population didn't like that one bit, so they rioted. They burned up cars, they attacked journalists, they attacked police. That was why they rioted, because their local drug dealer, the poor baby that he is, had been arrested by the cops. It wasn't because of anything that Donald Trump had said 3 days before. You frigging idiot. He'll probably get up on CNN tomorrow or tonight and say the same thing, and Don Lemon won't even challenge him on it, because that's the way it's going. But, you know, Trump's going to incinerate the world. So in comparison, I guess that's a reasonable opinion. To claim that Trump, by mistake, saying last night in Sweden, referring to a Fox News report, he caused riots in a migrant suburb of Stockholm, Sweden, 48 hours later. Absolutely insane. The left has gone absolutely insane, and they're not even getting called out for it by the supposed moderate mainstream left. Sticking on Sweden, given that there are several stories today about Sweden, as there always are, because it's an absolute liberal utopia that we should all aspire to. This is out of Gatestone Institute. Migrant fights 2-month sentence after raping 2 underage Swedish girls. Thinks punishment is too severe. Yeah. In what kind of messed up world do you get just 2 months in prison for raping a child? Sweden, once again, Sweden. Where else would it be? A Syrian migrant who was recently sentenced by a Swedish court to 2 months in prison for brutally raping a 13-year-old girl in a school toilet, 2 months in prison, and sexually abusing a 14-year-old victim, yesterday appealed the verdict. Appealed a verdict of 2 months in prison for raping a child, because that's too harsh. This is what we're all going to end up like in 10 years if we follow the path that Sweden has taken. His lawyer wants the former refugee, who is either 18 or 19 years old. That's probably BS. Tons of cases where they lie about their age, they've got no papers. But the lawyer wants this guy who raped a 13-year-old girl in a toilet set free immediately. Because 2 months in prison for raping a kid, that's too harsh. That's not liberal enough, is it? The serial child rapist should be sentenced to a much lighter sentence, the lawyer has stated, according to Sweden Radio. Yes, this is an actual report. The attorney asked for another ruling in the case because his client was supposedly only 17 when he committed the crimes. Again, they always lie about their age. That were carried out with just a few weeks in between. During the initial trial against the youth, it appeared that he was registered as 18 years of age when entering Sweden. However, the court subsequently raised questions. Freshly produced documents from the assailant's home country somehow proved to the judges that he was actually 1 year younger than previously stated, turning him into a minor at the time of the rapes. I'm sure he didn't lie about it or get fake papers. But still, even if he was 17, no charge whatsoever for raping a 13-year-old girl. That's what the lawyer is pushing for. The attack on the 13-year-old was the most brutal of 2 crimes. Just before Christmas, the girl was violently raped in her own school in Östersund, an urban area in the middle of Sweden. I'm sure it's a very pleasant place. There's no problems whatsoever with migrants there. It's all a right-wing conspiracy theory. After meeting the migrant through Snapchat, the Syrian forcibly dragged the victim to the school restrooms. Once there, he locked the doors and raped her, both vaginally and anally. After the sex attack, the man threatened the child with violence if she went to the police. Again, women in Sweden, they don't even want to go to the police anymore because in some circles it's treated as racist to even report being raped by a migrant. The reporting of rape has gone down in Sweden. They're across the media over the past few days brazenly lying, claiming that rapes have gone down in Sweden and that it only shows they went up because they changed the definition of rape. Well, no, they changed that before a year ago. Yet if you look, from 2014 to 2015, it basically doubled. after they changed the definition. So that's not the explanation, but you've got government officials, reporters from Sweden going on Fox News, brazenly lying. Meanwhile, this cretin got 2 months in prison for raping a kid, and they're trying to get him off completely. Maybe Hillary Clinton can help a hand. She's really good at getting child molesters off the hook, isn't she? The older victim, there were 2 victims, who had also claimed rape, was nearly 15 years old and therefore close to Sweden's age of sexual consent. The court considered miraculously turning the rape into the sexual exploitation of a child. So again, in that case, the sentence was made lighter. Absolutely insane what is happening in Sweden. Oh, by the way, it's also Malmo, Sweden, is the grenade capital of Europe because it's culturally enriched now. This is out of Gateway Pundit. Another grenade found in Malmo. There were at least 30 grenade attacks in Malmo, Sweden in 2015. Malmo, of course, is 43% foreign-born population. Some areas of Malmo, like Rosengård, are 90% Muslim. That's just a coincidence, I'm sure. Grenade attacks have increased significantly in Sweden over the past decade as tens of thousands of migrants and refugees have been welcomed into the country. You've also got an 84% increase in gun crime. But again, they get up on the news and lie about it because violence in domestic disputes has gone down. So they take that, they conflate all the statistics. If you look at gun crime, it's up 84% in Sweden because these gangs, these migrant gangs, are all at war with each other, which is kind of ironic because a lot of the innocent victims are actually migrants who didn't do anything wrong. They're caught in the crossfire of these attacks, these gang attacks. But still, the left doesn't care because if they had to admit there was a problem, they would have to admit that mass immigration, uncontrolled, was a dreadful idea. And they're never going to do that, even as cities are torn apart. So Sweden is the grenade capital, or Malmo is the grenade capital of Sweden. I've got friends who go to Malmo literally every month. They say, and the top police officers who have gone public on this say, you walk down the street at night and you just hear explosions going off left, right, and center. That is normal now. They actually classified grenades as fireworks, again, as a means of massaging the crime stats. Absolutely insane. Now, of course, there are tons of areas in Sweden which are perfectly safe and peaceful and nice, which is where all the leftists live. The people who love mass immigration never live anywhere near immigrant areas. They just sit in their ivory towers and lecture us all about how progressive they are. So yeah, there are many nice areas in Sweden, but they've got serious problems. And the government lying about it repeatedly is not going to fix those problems. The people who are trying to point out the problems, in one case, a economist, actually a Kurdish economist, he's come out with a new book, basically talking in a dry academic way about the impact immigration has had on Sweden with the numbers, the ones that are still available at least. They stopped taking numbers on ethnicity of crime suspects back in 2005 because it wasn't very convenient for them. So a new factual book about Swedish immigration is now considered racist by a Koro library in Stockholm, and it will not be purchased. But the library has no problem keeping Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf or other controversial books in its collection. So they actually refused to stock a book by an economist. This wasn't some right-wing neo-Nazis book. It was a dry academic book written by an economist about immigration in Sweden. And this library in Stockholm is so progressive that it refuses to stock the book. Maybe they'll just start burning the books next. Just burn all the books that challenge our consensus opinion, because that, again, is liberal and progressive. Sweden is the basket case of Europe. Again, it's a terrifying warning to America. Do not follow their example. Please do everything in your power not to follow their example. That is Sweden in a nutshell. And those, 3 or 4 stories I just covered, they're just from today. Just from today in Sweden. And again, I was talking earlier about just this hysterical PTSD froth fest, this toys out of the pram, autistic screeching from the left at absolutely everything. You heard the ridiculous revolutionary communist member on Tucker Carlson thinking that Trump is going to incinerate the earth. These are radicalized, dangerous people. I've predicted for a while that one of them, or a group of them, is just going to start going, weathermen style. They're just going to start blowing up police stations and government buildings. They're that radicalized by this absolute insanity, this hysterical insanity, that they think they're literally crusading against Hitler. If you actually start to believe that, you will go to any means necessary to carry out your mission. I think we're going to see domestic terrorism if this isn't scaled back, on a scale that we haven't seen in decades here in America. Listen to this. This is out of the Gateway Pundit, NYU professor and former leftist. This was a guy who was against George W. Bush. Nothing comes close to personal invective, insults, and degrading imagery of the left. Listen to what he said. This is Michael Rechtenwald, professor at New York University. He basically appeared on the O'Reilly Factor, not even the show. That's watched by millions of people, of course, but on Bill O'Reilly's podcast. So this former leftist, again, back in the day, anti-George W. Bush, traditional leftist, went on O'Reilly's podcast, and he was absolutely savaged for it. Listen to what he wrote on Facebook. I was on the receiving end of a Twitter SHIT storm from hell last night after O'Reilly tweeted my handle an interview, and after I suggested that Milo Yiannopoulos was a liberal, the same people hanging him, if Milo was a liberal, the same people hanging him symbolically now would be defending him zealously. The result, Twitter hell on earth. Listen to what he says, bearing in mind this is a former liberal. I don't want to reproduce the putrid and vile character of this attack, but I will say this. Today's left is rife with the most obscene, abusive, nasty, spiritually ugly, and utterly unethical, hypocritical, and fanatically horrible people I've ever encountered in my 58 years on earth. This was a liberal. This was a former liberal guy. He says, when I was a left liberal activist and founder of Citizens for Legitimate Government after the first George W. Bush election, he puts in quotes, again suggesting he thinks it was stolen. So again, he wasn't a right-winger. I routinely received hate mail from right-wingers. They were routinely mean-spirited. But now that I'm a critic of the left, nothing from the past comes close to the kind of personal invective, baseless insults, vilely degrading language and imagery that I was barraged with from these leftists. And all because I critiqued an ideology and its mechanisms and critiqued the hypocrisy of today's illiberal leftists. This is what he concludes it with. The left has utterly and completely lost its way, and I no longer want anything to do with it. I include most milieus of Marxism as well, as these have resorted to the same tactics in conjunction with the others. Goodbye to all that. Goodbye. So he is absolutely astonished by the sheer hatred he received simply for appearing on Bill O'Reilly's podcast. And he makes the point in the past, he's received hate from the right wing. I've received hate from the right wing, the actual racists within the alt-right, the Jew obsessives and those kind of people. Yeah, I get hate from them. It is nothing like what you will get from the left. Nothing like it. Just the absolute vulgarity, the vicious personal nature of it, the death threats, the financial threats, which is what we're experiencing right now because these people don't play by the rules. They don't play on a level playing field because they can't win the debate that way. The other thing they do is the left, the new left, which has been legitimized by the mainstream left, the hysterical new left, they don't have any principles, but they know that we do. Now, we're not perfect, but we try to maintain principles. Like, we may disagree with what you say, but we're going to fight to the death for your right to say it. We're not going to personally harass you and try to financially attack you if you have an opinion which differs to ours. Because we have principles. We're not going to call on the state and on giant corporations to censor you out of existence just because we disagree with your opinion. That's the difference. We have principles. They don't have any principles. They don't care. They don't care about having a debate. They just want to shut us down. Most people don't understand that. They don't want a debate, okay? They're not interested. They want us gone completely. They want to be in their own echo chamber, their own bubble, their own safe space. They don't want anyone to challenge that. They're not interested in debate. They're only interested in shutting us down completely. And that is a perfect example from a leftist professor describing the putrid, vile character of the attack against him simply because he appeared on Bill O'Reilly's podcast. These are the kind of people we're dealing with. You've seen the Antifa scum attack innocent women on the street for attending a speech about ideas. Now they're growing in power because they're being legitimized by the left. There was a Twitter user a few weeks ago now who was threatening, I think it was Cassandra Fairbanks, who herself used to be a leftist. This was an Antifa member. Cassandra Fairbanks is now a Trump supporter. This Antifa thug threatened to kill her children, threatened physical harm against her children because she knew them personally. They were former friends. She went on Twitter for days on end and broadcast these direct, violent threats against children, and Twitter did absolutely nothing for days. The sheer deluge of attention on it finally got their account suspended. They were violently threatening children. These are the kind of people that we're dealing with. And again, they're being brought into the mainstream left. They're being legitimized. And that's always the difference. The right has its crazies. The left has its crazies. The difference is the right doesn't try to legitimize its crazies. It disavows them. The left praises them, legitimizes them. They support attacks on Trump supporters. You know, Time magazine in defense of rioting. It all gets legitimized. And they're pumping out this constant drumbeat that Trump is going to incinerate the world, that he's going to shut down media, that he's an anti-Semite based on absolutely nothing. He's in full support of Israel, unlike Obama, whatever your view is on that, and yet they still call him an anti-Semite. While leftist fake hate crimes with swastikas that they drew themselves over and over again. Absolutely insane. This is the environment that we're living in now. Let's move on to some more news now. Though here we have this article, which is up on Infowars.com. People ask me why they bring in all the refugees in their millions in the case of Germany. Well, leftists in Germany want to give refugees the vote. Oh, now you begin to understand. Leftists in Germany want to give non-citizens, including refugees, the right to vote in elections, according to a new survey. So basically, they asked members of the different political parties or supporters of the different political parties in Germany if they supported a proposal to change electoral laws that would allow non-EU citizens living in Germany to vote. In other words, migrants and refugees, all non-citizens. The results were 63% of the Social Democrats supported the proposal. 64.8% of Green Party voters supported the proposal. Now, the problem with that is that the Social Democrat leader, Martin Schulz, of course, a top EU globalist, he is likely to be Angela Merkel, who is probably just as bad. But the Social Democrats are going to, by the looks of the polls right now, be in power after the German federal elections, which take place on 24th of September this year. So Schulz, if he wants to enact this policy, has the backing of the supporters of his party who want to make it legal for non-citizens to vote in German elections. And of course, they're going to vote for left-wing parties because those are the parties that shower them with welfare. So that's why they're bringing them in. That's why they want them to become citizens, but maybe not even that, to just pass laws that allow them to vote. The economist Martin Armstrong commented, quote, "Can you imagine letting everyone from Mexico come into the USA and then vote if the United States should petition Mexico to join them? It seems the left is just totally insane. They will do absolutely anything to win. And that means they will allow all of the Middle East to enter Germany, then outnumber the Germans in their own election. Where is the logic here?" Remember, we played the clip. Stephanie von Berg, the Green Party leader in Germany. She said in 20 years, ethnic Germans will be outnumbered in their own cities, and that is a good thing. She said that that is a good thing. Because, hey, there may be no German culture left. It may be completely eviscerated and replaced by a not so good culture, as you've seen from all the stories emanating out of Germany, no less. The truck attack just a couple of months ago, she said that was a good thing because, at least we won't be called racist. And those are the people who will be voting, and they will vote in the Green Party. They will vote in the left-wing parties. They're willing to destroy their own country and heritage simply to remain in political power. These are the people we're dealing with. Absolutely insane. You want to talk about censorship? This is an article about Facebook out of the Christian Post. Facebook suspends Christian homeschool mom's account over the posts, citing Bible on homosexuality. Christian mother is accusing the social media giant Facebook of censorship after her account was suspended over posts on what the Bible says about homosexuality and sin. So basically, she posted Bible passages. She had 76,000 followers on Facebook, and they suspended her basically for hate speech, for posting passages out of the Bible, whether you agree with homosexuality or not. And of course, 52% of Muslims in the UK don't, but they can march down the street calling for people to be beheaded because that's progressive and liberal. But God forbid you're a Christian who wants to post Bible passages on Facebook. She was suspended. This is what we're talking about. When you allow all your content and hard work to be segregated in these social media ghettos, then they just ban you and just take it all away. This is why InfoWars is so important, because at least for the time being, we will always have InfoWars. They can ban us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, but we will always control our own network, but only if you support us by getting the products as they try to sabotage us. InfoWarsStore.com. Zero Hedge reports Florida teacher reassigned after Facebook post praising Trump on immigration. So again, yet another example. They're censoring people for posting Bible passages, for being Christians. They're censoring people for criticizing immigration. And it's only going to intensify if they're able to successfully advance this fake news narrative, which is basically we censor all dissenting opinions. Alex talked about it earlier. There's a Homeland show, new season of Homeland, season 6, where they have an Alex Jones character. This is kind of interesting because I wasn't a fan of this show for a while when it started back in, I think it was 2011, but watched most of the series since. And this is an example of how politically correct culture has infested every level of society. Back when it started, this show was quite dynamic. It was interesting because it was reality based. Most of the plots are about Islamic terrorism because most terrorist plots are Islamic. But around, I think it was 2-3 years ago, they took a decidedly social justice turn. And it was all about them defending terrorists, basically, legally. The show, of course, lost its dynamism. It lost a great deal of viewers. And now it's back in season 6 trying to appease liberals with a female president-elect. Again, showing how they were completely out of touch with reality. The show was written before the presidential election. They fully expected Hillary Clinton to win, so they wrote it into the script. They also wrote into the script an Alex Jones character. It's blatantly based on Alex Jones and no one else. The twist, of course, is that the guy who obsessively listens to Alex Jones in the very first episode of this season, I believe it was, is somebody who was recently in the script, a victim of a biological attack. He's had a stroke, and he's gone basically half insane. He's hobbling around, passing out, and attacking people violently. He's the one who's obsessed with Alex Jones. Now, can you make a connection there? There's some kind of connection they're trying to make. Can't quite grasp it. Semi-deranged, aggressive person listening to Alex Jones on the radio. Yeah, I think you can make that connection yourself. So it's blatant propaganda. Propaganda placement. Again, the point is, most young people don't read newspapers. If they watch television news, they don't really believe it. There you see a clip from the current season of Homeland. So again, most young people on reading newspapers, they're not watching television news. If they're watching it, they don't believe it, so they have to put propaganda in the entertainment shows. This is what's happening. It's happening on British television. Nobody trusts the news anymore, so they're literally having politicians on entertainment shows that usually host celebrities to rant about how evil Donald Trump is. I'm going to sign off in a minute here, but first, again, I implore you to go to InfoWarsStore.com. We have Silver Bullet, Colloidal Silver, 33% off. Super Male Vitality, 25% off. Brain Force, 25% off. Survival Shield X2, 25% off. The new book by Roger Stone. You can get the toothpaste. You can get the lithographs. Free Alexa Pure with 3 months InfoWars Select storable food supply, so you can take advantage of that offer. Tons of offers, tons of 5-star reviews. We need your support more than ever. Stock up. Just buy a huge amount of products. We need it now. We've just had $3 million yanked from underneath us. For a news organization that's, you know, in comparison to the giants, not that big. I mean, that is an absolutely huge amount of money, and it's a deliberate attack. You saw the email, we posted it. It was because of our political content. A deliberate, direct attack on our source of funding, which is the products. That's it. It's not George Soros. It's not dictators in the Middle East. It's not giant pharmaceutical companies. It's you buying the products. If they remove the ability for us to advertise our own products, then we're going to sink. We're going to sink fast. So we need you to get the products to support us more than ever. InfoWarsStore.com, or you can make a direct donation at InfoWars.com/show. Absolutely vital that you do that today and on an ongoing basis, because unprecedented attacks, you know, whether it be Milo, whether it be Roger Stone, everybody is under the spotlight to such a degree right now. The fangs are out. They smell blood in the water, and they're coming after us. But we will not submit so long as we can rely on your support to hold us up in these difficult times. InfoWarsStore.com for all the products. InfoWars.com/show to donate. This is the Defense of Liberty 13-hour broadcast special. Coming up next, Rob Dew and Owen Schroyer. They'll be speaking with Brittany Pettibone, who, of course, herself, her source of funding was attacked. They wouldn't even let her start a GoFundMe to basically buy a microphone because she had some opinions which they disagreed with. They started a Twitter campaign against her. Just across the board, they're trying to shut us down. Censorship, insidious, underhanded tactics, because they know they're losing the debate on a level playing field. We whoop their ass every single time, so they have to resort to dirty tricks. Let's throw it back in their face.
In case you haven't heard, InfoWars has become the most influential media outlet in America. We're making freedom go viral. And now we are proud to announce a new weapon in the epic battle against the globalists. InfoWars Prime, where you can watch live high-definition feeds of The Alex Jones Show, plus exclusive insider videos from the InfoWars crew and behind-the-scenes action. Go to InfoWars.com/app and download today. InfoWars Prime is available right now for your iPhone or Android. You will have access to exclusive videos that you can't see anywhere else. And that means live coverage of events and breaking news on location as it happens. You can also take advantage of amazing deals from the InfoWars store that are only available for InfoWars Prime subscribers. That's InfoWars Prime at InfoWars.com/app. And if you can hear my voice, you are the resistance.